Hi everyone, this is CricketSong with Lunar Wisdom, and I want to talk to you today about spiritual growth. So the reason I want to talk to you about spiritual growth is my own personal journey. I'm sure if you've been watching videos for the last year on my channel, or you've been tuning into the live stream, Weird Witches, Witchcraft that I do with Obsidian Fire, you've heard me talk about my own spiritual transition, or my spiritual practice, or my witchcraft going through some sort of change or shift. And I think this is a necessity for personal and spiritual growth. I believe that each of us go through these shifts throughout our lives. Things that we might have believed when we were children, we don't believe or align with now as adults. And I believe and I feel that it's not unheard of, but I think it's a rarity nowadays to find someone who grew up in one religion or spiritual practice and still maintain it now as an adult in the exact same way. If I was raised Roman Catholic as a child, I still may be Roman Catholic as an adult, but some of my own understandings, my own beliefs within that structure may be very different because I've had experiences, I've learned things, I've had maybe interactions with the God or Jesus or Mary, and these things may have shifted my beliefs. So how I perceive Catholicism as an adult is very different than what I perceived Catholicism was as a child. I think this is a natural occurrence for human beings. I think it's a healthy occurrence for human beings because the whole idea of life here on earth is about personal expansion, learning, growing, changing, becoming the best version of who we are. So over this last year, maybe a little longer, I've been going through a personal spiritual transition. And it has a lot to do with my family relocating from Massachusetts to Washington State, where I live now. Around the summertime of last year, my family and I came out here to Washington on a vacation, and there is a video of our vacation on my channel. And we came out here with the idea of checking out the area to see if the children and I liked it and if we'd be willing to move out here, because my husband grew up here in Washington State and he had a desire to come back home. So after the vacation, the children and I agreed Washington State seemed like a place we'd like to start a life together, or a new life, or have new experiences. My son was finishing up college and he was looking at a school out here anyway. So it took a year for us to get things in order and finally move out here. And we moved here to Seattle around the end of June, the beginning of July. But in that year, a lot of things for me changed. Not only my physical location, but with the intention of moving, my energetic vibration, my personal frequency shifted, and things began to change for me. The first of which was the dissolution of Lunar Wisdom Coven, the in-person coven that I had birthed with members of the coven. That dissolved. Following that was the Wisdom of the Crescent Moon, which was my online coven. That dissolved. Friendships that I had established in person at home changed. The shop that I was doing readings at closed. My relationships with family shifted and changed. Online friendships established, and some of those dissolved. So there were so many things happening within my personal relationships including the relationships with my matron and patron. They seemed to take a couple of steps back. I sent my DNA to Ancestry.com, and I began becoming more interested in my ancestors, my physical ancestors. Most of them live in France or came from France, and I started doing research. I'm 75% French, which made perfect sense to me because my mother's family and my father's family came from France. So I started doing research in the gods and the religion of France. These things, as well as visions I encountered and during meditations, experiences that I had, started to shift and change my practice and shifted my relationships with gods because I no longer had a matron or patron. I started seeking and I started learning and I started having very different experiences, which has brought me to where I am today, which is still in transition, but my understanding and my relationship with my practice is different. And with that, and this book I am currently reading, it made me realize that the label I have adopted or did adopt no longer fits. So I don't consider myself a non-traditional Wiccan any longer. Now don't worry, I am not going back to Christianity for sure, but I cannot identify myself as a non-traditional Wiccan anymore. And I'm going to go through the tenets that I have discussed in a blog post, a series of blog posts, which I will link in the information section of this video, and why I've come to decide that identifying with the label of Wiccan or Wicca no longer really fits me. Now, I am a person who strongly believes in the power of words and names. So this is important for me to share with you that I am not a Wiccan any longer. I think identifying oneself with a label is important because aligning with a specific label aligns you with a specific vibrational frequency, which adds power to your spiritual practice and your witchcraft. But it's important to be able to shed labels when they no longer serve you as well. So things that can bring us power can be very restrictive if we don't let go of it if it no longer serves us. And this is what I'm doing. I'm letting go of a label that no longer serves me because I no longer align with how I define Wicca. This doesn't mean that some of those beliefs and practices I still don't use within my practice, but the majority of them I don't really align with anymore. And this is where I'm going to share with you. There's tenets, and I'm going to state the tenet and tell you why I no longer really align with some of them. Some of them I still do, okay? So the following tenets that, for me, define what Wicca is. The first one is understanding the unity of the all, you know, being polarities, goddess and God. That I still align with. That is still a core belief for me. So that I still align with. Having a relationship with the land I reside in. I have a relationship and I'm working on this relationship. And this is a big part of a transition for me because back in Massachusetts, that land, that energy is very different than the land here. I did not feel very connected with Fae. I didn't feel very connected with the elemental spiritual beings of the land back in Massachusetts. My relationships were very much with spiritual entities, and I had some relationship with the land, but I didn't really understand the personality of the Fae, of the elementals. My relationship here with the land and elementals is much stronger because this energy is not so much about ancestors or the spirits of those who lived here before, but the more primordial relationship with the elementals, with the Fae. And that is where I'm sort of delving into here. Having a relationship with the elements is important for me as someone who was Wiccan, and the elements are still important to me. So that's still something I resonate with. Having a relationship with the ancestors, the ancient ones, and the beloved dead. This still plays a very big part for me, but where my personal beloved dead are sort of taking a step back to the elementals and the elements. So I'm finding that I'm more focused on the land and the forces within the environment. Having a knowledge and practice of magic is important as a Wiccan, and it's still important to me as well. It's still a very big part of my practice. I am still a witch. Accepting personal accountability and responsibility is still very much an important part of my practice. Having a sense of inviolable personal power, still important. Having a relationship with the tools of the craft. Not all the tools of the craft are so much important to me anymore. Different tools are becoming important to me. My blade and my cauldron and my chalice and my pentacle are still very important to me, but a lot of other tools are not. And actually my blade, because I'm not casting circle, which I'm going to talk about soon as I come down to this list, are not as important to me. So my relationship with the tools of the craft are changing. Celebrating the seasons and aspects of the earth cycle during a Sabbat at its proper time. I acknowledge the changing of the seasons, but my celebrations are not as important to me as they once were. Celebrating the moon aspects at the proper time. Celebrating the moons are not as important to me, but working magic with the lunar cycles are important to me, but actually celebrating and holding celebrations for it is not as important to me as it once was. Understanding the symbolism and power of ritual. I understand how important ritual is. However, I am not practicing ritual as often as I did when I truly was immersed in a Wiccan practice. Honoring the body as manifestations of the all, that is still important to me. Understanding all levels of the Wiccan creed or read, I understand them. Understanding the law of return, I understand that, and I do still resonate with it. Understanding the witch's pyramid, I understand it and I still resonate with that. Aspiring to the 8 virtues, they're important, but my personal virtues are very different at this time. Understanding the lessons of the charge of the goddess, understanding the lessons of the descent of the goddess. I understand both, and they are a very important aspect of self for me. And understanding the 3 realms, I understand as well, and the different realms are still very much a reality for me. The biggest part of this is that I see Wicca as a very structured spiritual practice. My personal practice is not very structured anymore. It doesn't follow the same ritual all the time anymore. My relationship with the elements, with the guardians, with the watchtowers is very different now. There are certain aspects that I used to have as a pillar of my practice are no longer present for me. So I see that I am shifting and changing. My practice is very much one of a witch. I am a witch. I always have been a witch, and I will continue to be a witch. But the spiritual aspect is very different, and that is where I'm trying to figure out. as I delve into my bloodline, my heritage, the Celtic pantheon is becoming more prominent for me, and I am looking to explore Celtic paganism as a possible place. But right now I am within this transition. I am changing. My witchcraft is very more, I guess, more folk magic type stuff, very less ritualistic. And I guess for me, when I think of Wicca, I think of very ritualistic things, very much a structure. And right now, with this transition happening, I don't really have structure. And I am embracing this change. Everything that I thought was what my craft and my practice was about is not what my craft and practice is about anymore. So follow me through this shifting and changing of my personal practice. Understand that I still identify as witch. I still practice witchcraft, but I no longer identify as a non-traditional Wiccan. If you have questions, please feel free to ask. And until next time, I love you. Blessed be. Mwah.